Next question comes from Torgruff. How crazy is December 15th going to be as a Jazz fan? How crazy will it slash it should it be for us with trade eligibility hitting that day? I don't know if the Jazz have anyone who suddenly becomes trade eligible that isn't right now, but for other teams specifically, that's when I think Bobby Marks said 71% of players are eligible to trade right now. 89% of players will be eligible to be traded on December 15th. Which
Yeah,
I want to answer this question first. You
go
shouldn't
ahead.
expect December 15th to be crazy because nothing ever really happens on that day. It's just sort of this arbitrary marker we all like to talk about, and it
Yeah.
gives websites an excuse to write about trades, which generate conversation for 2 months.
Yeah, it's definitely, I agree. My first thought, apologies, but it's like, I don't think it's going to be crazy at all. I think, except insofar as there will be a fresh batch of like fake trade articles coming out that can now
On just
involve a
league
bunch
wide
of,
notes. Yeah.
yeah, a bunch of players that can now be moved. For the Jazz specifically, I think, I don't know about you, but I feel like we talked about, I kind of posited that like it's too late to tear down and trade all these guys because they've already won enough games. They're not going to be able to get bad enough to get down towards the very bottom. But they've slipped. I think last I looked, they were, I think, maybe in the 10th spot, but it's like, what are they, 3 games out of fourth or something in the West because everybody's so condensed. I think it's still very much within, reason to say, what can we get for Conley, Beasley, Clarkson, Olynyk, like those types of guys. I don't think they'll trade Sexton, and I don't know that he's going to be a positive value guy at his number. Maybe I don't think you should trade Markkinen. I think you hold on to him, and then everybody else is kind of young and or cheap enough that like you wouldn't trade Vanderbilt, for example. I don't think, or you certainly wouldn't trade Kessler. So I think the Jazz, it's too late to get really in the mix for Wembanyama, but it's definitely not too late to just get what you can for guys that probably are not pieces of the really good Jazz team that may exist in 3 or 4 years. But I don't think it's going to get too crazy on December 15th for them or for really anybody.
Yes, if I was the Jazz, I would still, and I think Colin Sexton would absolutely be positive value, by the way, on his contract. 4 and 70, if that's
Mhm.
the number, or 72, whatever it ended up being. I would do exactly what you said. Like you still need to be on the prowl for picks for the players that don't factor into your long term. And if you go the Larry Markkinen or Colin Sexton route, even I think you would have to be bowled over. At the same time, I would opportunistically buy. Like if John Collins' value is really through the roof, why not try and scoop him up? If it's really not going to cost you like a good first round pick or even a first, like the the packages being floated out for John Collins, not just by fans, but by media members and people in the know, they make me uncomfortable because
Mhm.
they just like diminished Collins to this salary dump, which we've talked about already. And so if you can be an opportunistic buyer, absolutely go that route. You can maybe reboot his trade value and you flip him later, or oh hey, you have like this fringe all star again, also who fits the motif of what you're trying to do on offense and play 5 out for most of your time on the floor. Or you could probably get away with playing him alongside Walker Kessler. So I would be I'm probably a little bit like not as just because you can't get into the Wembanyama sweepstakes right now. At least I don't think you can.
Mhm.
I might be like more on the prowl for like, oh, like where's this buy low thing? Or is it like, or the Knicks really like, are they going to bury, they're interested in Kyle Kuzma when they have Julius Randle. Are they just going to bury Obi Toppin? What does it take to get him out of there? Like if it doesn't take a first round pick, which it should, but if it doesn't, why not just see like what he fits? And so even if it's buying on these, you know, younger second, third draft, like a Cam Reddish. Like if you can get a Cam Reddish with just to like see what he can do inside your system, not to name all Knicks players. So it would be nice, I guess, if you really wanted to buy, you would go like lean into the defensive stopper route, which is something this team probably needs the most. But I just don't know like who's out there that would be worth them actually going after. KJ Martin could be interesting, but that's not like really fitting the defensive stopper mold for them. So yeah, I don't really know like specific targets, but like I don't know that they should treat themselves like like a Josh Richardson might help their defense. But is that someone? I guess if it doesn't cost you anything, okay, sure. But like that's not someone you should be actively chasing, or a Robert Covington if the Clippers decide to make him available. Those are like again, if it doesn't cost you anything, it's different. But if you're gonna buy on these second, third draft guys, or you're stumbling into like the John Collins-esque opportunity.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think basically the Jazz should be in the upside game business.
That's a
Like
great way to phrase it.
which means, you roughly know what Beasley, what Conley, what Clarkson, what Olynyk. You know what those guys can do, and like it's great because it's fine. I mean, it's better than fine because it's gotten the Jazz. They've all been contributors, and the Jazz being a big surprise and having a lot of success. But like, if look at exchanging one of those sort of known commodities with relatively understood and not super high ceilings for Collins is a perfect example. He's basically a distressed asset right now. Like that's the type of guy you go for. Even Reddish is another. Like maybe it clicks somewhere, or maybe I
Jackson
mean,
Hayes
I don't know
even
if the Warriors are
in New
interested,
Orleans.
but like you think about trying a Wiseman or a
Yeah.
Moses Moody, guys that just still have, some measure of upside, low odds maybe to hit it, but in the Jazz's position, why not?
Or you just try and get involved where we're talking about the Jay Crowder report that came out where I think he was ultimately headed to, was it Atlanta in that? There's been so many different Jay Crowder scenarios. We know Miami and Atlanta are like super interested, but there was like these third team scenarios. You can also just be the team. You have some of these expiring contracts. Like let's use Olynyk as an example. You're probably not married to him, even though like he's been good for you. Can you use him, take back longer term money, and then just acquire more assets? Like you haven't moved the needle in either direction for your team this season, and you've just accumulated more assets without actually selling off. And so I think if I'm the Jazz, I approach it that way. I don't look at it as we need to tear down. I think you can still get value for Beasley with his team option this summer because they have him under control. And like Conley's contract is not going to get any better or worse. I mean, if anything, it gets better because he'll be entering the final year, assuming they fully guarantee it. So if I'm the Jazz, like I have to be bowled over by offers at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to, like you said, you're in the upside game. And so whether that's a younger player or an entrenched impact veteran who's maybe fallen off, I think that's the route that you go. And if you can't, then look at, we do have some, like, they don't want to move Jordan Clarkson, but so like even if you're moving a Conley, but like I said, Olynyk before, or even was Rudy Gay, like you can step ladder your way to getting bigger salaries that are, I guess, worse than Rudy Gay's or worse than what you have on your books to get more pick and prospect equity. Maybe that's something to look at.